Now, let's go live back to Parliament House, where our correspondent Joseph Ogakpo is standing by with more information. Now, Joseph, thank you for your time. We understand the Finance Minister is making plans to come and explain the economic impact of a lockdown to Parliament. What else do we know about this?
And so the disclosure that we got from the Minister for Information, Kojo Nkrumah, in Parliament a while ago, is that this is a document that the President has directed the Finance Minister to actually go ahead and put together. He was responding to questions and demands for a lockdown of the country, the latest of which is coming from the former Deputy Minister for Interior, James Agalga, who is the minority spokesperson on Defense and Interior. Earlier in the course of the day, he said it's now or virtually never, and that Ghana has gone past the time for a national lockdown, and he repeatedly made that demand in an interaction with the media earlier today. And the Minister for Information, Kojo Nkrumah, was responding to that a while ago. He made the point that till date, as we speak, the data that's coming from experts and even the advice that's coming from experts and the tracking with the data that they're putting together does not support the idea of a lockdown of the country now. But he went on to say that it's a decision that the President will take subsequently, and when that time comes, that will be communicated to Ghanaians. And in the course of that conversation, the Information Minister did disclose that the President has again directed that the Finance Minister actually undertakes an economic assessment when it comes to what the possible impact of a lockdown will be. And that he again disclosed that this is information that will again help them model the various possible measures of what a lockdown should look like, even if that becomes necessary. And he responded specifically to the request that's coming from the Ghana Medical Association as well for this lockdown. You'll recall that Kojo Nkrumah had indicated that the experts are being consulted. So I did put that to him, that the experts are now advising on that lockdown. And he said that this is a decision that's not being taken from a single perspective of a specific expert. So the medical folks are advising, the human security folks are advising, the national security folks are advising. All of that will come together on a decision that should actually be taken. But again, back to the expectation with the Minister for Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, you would recall that he was in Parliament sometime last week to update MPs on what is being done to help keep the economy in shape, even as the coronavirus spreads, and made disclosures on the $100 million that has been sought from the IMF, the World Bank, and other institutions. The specific indication we get is that tomorrow, it's very likely, that's not been fully confirmed, but that's the hint that we're getting, that he will be in the House specifically to update members of Parliament on that particular situation and how far Ghana has gone with raising money, and also make MPs aware of the necessary measures to keep the economy going as far as the situation with the coronavirus scare is concerned. So it's a broad conversation he's expected to have with Parliament tomorrow on the conversation around lockdown and helping keep the economy in shape, even in the light of the spread of the coronavirus.
Right. Now, in Parliament, of course, James Agalga is one of a number of people who is calling for a lockdown. The President, when he received the Finance Minister's document, raised the fact that many factors must be considered in this. For those who are calling for a lockdown, have they been providing suggestions on how it should be done?
James Agalga makes the point that this is a situation where it's about prioritizing human life and making that the most important thing in the equation and the conversation, and that looking at the numbers that are coming up as far as this particular spread is concerned, it's an option that's available for government in terms of how to deal with it, containing humans in specific locations so that then we won't see a situation of the virus moving from one point to the other. He makes the point that these are not decisions that should just be taken simply and then rolled out, but then necessary consultation should be done with state security agencies, the police, various other agencies, so that then all other things in terms of providing basic amenities are still put in place rightly, even as the lockdown comes into place. So that's kind of the idea that Mr. Gaga is offering, that a holistic approach to any possible lockdown that will not just be a security-focused issue, but then involving various different sectors of the economy and other experts, so that then Ghanaians are not hit badly, even as the lockdown comes into being.
How is Parliament itself continuing to deal with this outbreak? We know that their numbers were drastically reduced in terms of attendance. Some of them were wearing masks. Anything changed on that front?
So this is a conversation that's actually happening not on the floor of Parliament. So the point about a lockdown and the economic assessment that the finance minister will be presenting, and the conversation around the request by James Agalga for amnesty when it comes to prisoners, which I'm sure we'll get back to a little later, is actually a conversation that's happening outside Parliament, specifically with members of Parliament, including James Agalga and Kojo Nkrumah. On the floor itself, that conversation regarding COVID-19 has actually not come up. MPs continue to wear their mask even as they undertake their business. Earlier in the day, the Minister for Works and Housing, Samuel Atachian, was on the floor of Parliament to respond to questions about sea defense wall in the Ada area, as well as housing projects for various institutions. The Energy Minister, Peter Mbeu, was also on the floor of Parliament to respond to questions on rural electrification projects that are ongoing in the South Dai constituency and other areas. And with regard to that, he gave a hint that they were expecting to extend electricity to some areas in South Dai, that they had a deadline of December 2020. But in the light of the COVID-19, this is something that could possibly negatively be impacted, and the timelines may move back a little. So that broad conversation on other things apart from COVID-19 is happening on the floor of Parliament. MPs are wearing their masks. The numbers are reduced drastically. Earlier in the day, I counted well about 40 to 50 MPs on the floor, even as business was being undertaken. A while ago, they went into a committee of a whole sitting to discuss how the National Health Insurance Fund should be disbursed, and the House is currently on suspension. We are expecting them to return sometime after 4 p.m. to consider other businesses, including the corporate insolvency bill. So the numbers are down drastically. MPs are still wearing their masks even as they go around their duties, and they are on a break at the moment to return sometime after 4 p.m. Kojo.
Right, now let's talk about James Agalga's call for an amnesty of sorts in order to decongest our prisons. It's an ongoing conversation. Many have contributed to it, calling on government to act swiftly to prevent a catastrophe in our prisons. What in particular is James Agalga's concern here?
James Agalga referenced Sir Kwame Boateng's documentary Locked and Forgotten that showed a lot of congestion in a lot of the prisons. He indicated that the number of people in the prisons are 50% more than the expected figure that should be in there, and he thinks that it's one of the most dangerous places, that if we see the coronavirus spread there, the situation could be very dire. So he says that the last time the president used his prerogative as president to grant amnesty to prisoners was 10 days after he was sworn into power as president back in January 2017, and he thinks now is the best time for him to apply that prerogative and go ahead and grant amnesty to prisoners. He was specific that people who may be petty offenders, who may have engaged in acts that are not exactly very detrimental to the state, are people that the state should consider pardoning. And he says that it's about time that the president acted very swiftly and got as much of them out of the prisons as possible, so that then those who have been involved in very hardened criminal activities are the ones who are left there. Otherwise, with what is happening, if the virus spreads there, then the country would be in trouble. I did see clarity on that from the Information Minister, Kojo Nkrumah, as to what government makes of this particular suggestion. And he says this is something that has actually come to the attention of President Akufo-Addo. The president gave a directive to the Interior Minister, Ambrose Derry, to assess and evaluate and come back with a report on the feasibility or otherwise of that particular suggestion. And sometime soon, Ambrose Derry will submit that report to the President for a decision to be taken. I asked him about timelines on when Ambrose Derry will submit that particular report to the President. He says those specific details cannot be given, but government is really considering that option, and the nation would know more soon.
Right. I think it's important to clarify here. Earlier we were talking about the Information Minister's comments, and he did say that the economic impact of any new measures are being considered. Obviously, government has a number of options in terms of measures to take. A lockdown is only one possible measure, and so just to clarify that, yes, whichever measures the government decides to take, they are interested in the economic impact of those measures, and that's what the Finance Minister has been assessing in that document. All right, now, Joseph, does Mr. Agalga have any intention of making a statement on the floor of Parliament to further his call on the President regarding decongestion of prisons?
Well, he says for now it's a conversation that he's bringing up and getting the nation to talk about and drawing attention to if other steps become necessary in terms of trying to get the information out and to get that particular request escalated. He will do that in due course.
The Information Minister, Kojo Nkrumah, mentioned that there is some $30 million facility being accessed from the World Bank. Were there any more details on that?
From the Information Minister himself, no, but that's something that the details of which have actually been brought to Parliament by the Finance Minister himself. He indicates that it's actually a $35 million facility. It's coming at a 0% interest rate. It's money that's coming to the country, and the country would have up to 5 years before beginning repayment of that particular facility. And this is something that the World Bank is giving to various nations that have been impacted negatively by the spread of the coronavirus, and that the necessary applications have actually gone out to the World Bank requesting for that particular funding, and they are awaiting feedback and possible release of the amount sometime soon.
Do we know whether there are any conditionalities attached to it?
From the clarification that came from the Finance Minister and his deputy, Charles Boahene, when they offered those details to Parliament, the money is not coming with any conditionalities. It's coming at interest-free. It's not coming with any other requirements. You just have to be a country that's been hit by the coronavirus spread, and the indication is that any amount that's been given you will be just around 1% of your GDP, which is how come Ghana had to stick with a specific figure of about $35 million. And he indicated that beyond that, beyond the World Bank, they're considering money from the IMF as well as the Stabilization Fund as part of efforts to keep the economy running appropriately, even in the light of the spread of the virus.
Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, I want to thank you once again for your time and for that extensive, comprehensive update from Parliament. We appreciate it.